Hey guys, Mitch Kendra here from Kiefer Inc. Testing / RacerX Online. I'm filling in for Kiefer this week. I'm a little bit taller, a little bit slower, but don't mind that. But we are here in South Carolina for the 2024 Yamaha Cross Country model intro. We're riding a couple two-strokes. We're riding the all-new YZ125X. Again, that is similar changes to last year's 2023 Yamaha YZ450F that Eli Tomac raced in Supercross. So we're going to ride some two-strokes, we're going to ride some four-strokes, we're going to give you guys feedback. And so you guys are probably wondering, why are we here in South Carolina? Why am I filling in for Kiefer? The second question I don't have an answer to, so sorry about that. But the first answer is a lot of these two-stroke models and off-road models are based on, or riders are based out of the East Coast here. The GNCC series, which kicks off this weekend with the Big Buck GNCC on Saturday and Sunday, a lot of those entries are East Coast riders up and down the West, or up and down the East Coast, north to south, between Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, all those, up to PA where I'm based, Ohio, all those areas. So we're going to test these bikes in the conditions that are meant to be raced, meant to be ridden in, and we're going to give you guys feedback. Just a couple quick notes. We do have the 125X, again two-stroke here, the 250 YZ250X, again two-stroke, and the YZ450FX. We don't have the 250FX model. That doesn't have a ton of changes to this year's edition, but we do have these bikes, which there's not a ton of changes to these bikes either, but they wanted to provide us an opportunity to ride these bikes and get out and experience these here at Randy Hawkins facility. So as I mentioned, the two-strokes don't have a ton of changes, nor does the YZ250FX four-stroke model. Again, we're not riding that one today, but the YZ450FX model does have those changes. As I mentioned, the bikes that we saw in Supercross last year, the all-new model, the off-road cross-country version got those changes, plus a little bit of changes to the suspension, transmission, and some updates there to make the bike a little bit more friendly, a little bit more comfortable for the off-road conditions that we're going to see here, and again that people see in the GNCC series, and these more woods, trails, softer East Coast, rough and rugged tracks. So yeah, we're just going to take a ride on these bikes. We're going to give you guys feedback. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, you slung it off? Yeah.
So we had some time on the moto track and some time in the woods loop. Personally, in the morning it was a little muddy for both, but we made it work. I spent a lot of time in the moto track getting comfortable with the bike, and then the track got worked in pretty good, so we spent some time in the afternoon on both the moto track and in the woods loop. Personally, I'm coming off of the YZ250F, so the two-strokes are a whole new animal for me, so I was getting comfortable on the bikes, kind of learning as we went. But between comparing the 125 and the 250X, personally I think the 125 for me, I was more comfortable on. I'm about 5'10", 160, 65 pounds, give or take a day, and I'm a sea-level rider, so I don't need that extra oomph that the 250X has. I don't need that extra power down low. I just felt like when I was getting sketchy on the 250X, it was a little bit less controllable, versus the 125X, I could just kind of shut it down, grab the clutch, and I wasn't kind of as wonky. But again, that's just my personal preference. If you like two-stroke. So we wrapped up day 2 here. It's Friday at Randy Hawkins factory plantation ride. This was the 4-stroke day on the YZ125X, and again, this bike has a lot of changes that the 2023 YZ450F that Eli Tomac races in Supercross and Motocross last year has. There's updated riding, comfortability in the rider triangle here. So we talked to the Yamaha suspension and technicians, and they said the bike has a narrower body here in the shrouds, but also more narrow here in the radiators. And again, that with the foot pegs being a little bit lower and a little bit farther back, I think it was 5 millimeters each way. That just helps with the rider triangle and comfortability. I guess the previous bike, everybody said it was a little bit tight and a little bit crammed, but now they spaced it out a little bit. So coming off what I have at home is a YZ250F, a 2021 model. So this was a rather comparable bike, a little bit more power, obviously, since it's the 450, but a lot of similarities. I did notice, as I mentioned, the shrouds being a little bit skinnier on this bike. I didn't ride my bike back to back, obviously, but if I would have, I think I would have really noticed how narrow this bike was after riding this bike and then getting onto my bike back home. Again, my bike back home has a little bit of a difference in the width. I think they said it's about 1.5 inches total that they were able to narrow down here, which doesn't seem like a big difference, but when you're riding it, it does make your legs stick out a little bit less than it would previously. And then again, when you're going through the woods like we were here, you're not as easily to clip things on the right or left sides of the trails. So that's a big difference with this bike, is again, the rider triangle and the comfortability there. Also with it was a suspension. It's a little bit stiffer setup as the 2-strokes were yesterday for us. I think for me and Weege were about 160, 165. They didn't have to really adjust the sag or anything. It was just stock really good. And again, the suspension is a little bit stiffer, or a little bit softer on the cross-country models, just because you're going through woods, you're going through bumps more so than a motocross track. But this bike, they are a little bit stiffer suspension-wise. It's set up a little bit heavier than me. Again, for somebody it's about 200 pounds, just because these bikes are meant for guys that are a little bit bigger than me, a little bit faster than me. But that's okay, because these bikes are relatively easy to tune between the Yamaha Power app and the clickers and suspension setup. So again, the smaller rear wheel on this bike compared to the motocross bike, but the stiffer suspension compared to my bike, but softer suspension compared to the YZ250F 4-stroke that Eli Tomac races in Supercross and Motocross. Just generally a lot of fun bike. Again, we didn't play with the tuning app, but you can detune it. If this was my personal bike, I would have detuned it a little bit, just so I didn't have that bottom end kick just as much, just so I could feel a little bit more in control and not get as wild coming out of the turns when I'm in the lower gear. But a great bike to ride. Again, with the new changes, a great bike in general, but the new changes really fit this market out here on the East Coast. And again, these bikes are designed for East Coast rough terrain, going up and down the hills of the GNCCs through tight trees, but they're also designed to be going really fast in the desert, almost 100 miles an hour. So the Yamaha team has to design this bike to be able to do both conditions. And without testing it in the desert, I mean, the East Coast, it's pretty well done. So again, shout out to Randy Hawkins and the entire Yamaha staff. They took care of us, washed our bikes, fed us, everything we needed, helped us set the sag, helped us get gear, anything we needed, they helped take care of us. So this was an awesome place. And again, shout out to Randy for letting us ride here. He let us in a little bit of a ride here at the end, which was awesome to see him riding. If you're interested in Yamahas, check out your local dealerships or visit the Yamaha website. And also, if you're interested in testing a bike like this, Yamaha does have those demos. I think, and I mentioned it earlier, Jason Rains here on the East Coast, he has Yamaha YZ250FX all the way down to YZ65 models, 2-strokes for younger kids. So if you're looking to get a bike, you can test ride these in a couple different conditions on a motocross track and a GNCC style woods loop. That way you kind of know what you're getting in a bike before you buy it, as opposed to just jumping from a bike like this maybe to a 125 2-stroke X, or vice versa. Or if your kid's growing and needs a new bike, they can kind of test a 125 or a 250F depending on their size. So check those out if you're interested in testing a bike, and stay tuned here on RacerX Online and for Kiefer Inc. testing for more write-ups here over the next couple days.